Online gaming and social networking has changed a lot since the early days of the internet. While most sites did start off humbly with people signing up to share their innermost thoughts and ideas, some were far more experimental for their time. One of the most influential during this period was a little flash game called Habbo Hotel. Habbo was an up-and-coming virtual world that operated as a social client, and it has somehow survived to this very day. Users can register accounts and create unique avatars that act as their vessel while exploring a massive community-driven virtual hotel. It was essentially an evolution of the classic chat room client, where people can connect and send messages back and forth, only this time they had visual representations of each other and could walk around and engage in various activities. Habbo's origins go all the way back to August 1999, under the name of Mobiles Disco, a chat client for Mobiles, a Finnish rap group. It was created by Sampo Karalainen and Ampo Kirola. It was supposed to be a social space for fans of Mobiles to congregate and talk to one another. The site's popularity grew relatively quickly, with people from all around the world joining the service. People were flocking online just to check out this new phenomenon. It felt like the future, our first glimpse of what could potentially become virtual reality. This surge in traffic resulted in the game being adapted for international users. This wouldn't be enough and users were wanting more out of the experience. Mobiles Disco would either need to radically change or a new product would have to be created to accommodate this fresh venture. Sampo stated in a 2002 interview, "We weren't really trying to build an online community in the first place. The idea was just to make something interesting for the band. But the site started to live its own life. It worked so well, we wanted to continue working on the same kind of projects." This eventually would lead to the dawn of a new era, the creation of the first iteration of Habbo Hotel, localized on Finland's side of the internet. Habbo continued to grow in popularity over the years, gaining a sizable following. This allowed the game to expand in new ways, such as adding new furniture called Fernie for players to purchase, mini-games to play with friends, subscription services for exclusive character clothing and color options, and so much more. The notoriety of the game helped it spread to newer markets, especially a younger generation who was growing up in the new internet age. Habbo was designed as a social platform for teenagers, and as such, young men and women signed up to make new friends, chat about whatever dumb thing was on their minds, and generally just be lethargic and angsty. You know, like teenagers. It's really no wonder this game became a hit with the kids because it had a cutesy pixel art aesthetic. It was colorful and inviting, and the monetization wasn't totally out of whack, so kids could very easily convince their folks to cough up a few bucks. An influx of young people playing the game meant that the baseline of common sense and general intelligence was significantly lowered, and people who enjoy getting a rise out of others would have a relatively reactive market to engage with. There was no two-factor authentication at this time, nor any systems to prevent spam accounts from being created back-to-back. This was a much simpler time when the only real defense anybody had on the internet was to just close out their browser. Screwing around and pissing people off proved to be a very simple task in the game. All it took was cutting someone off from their immediate satisfaction, and that satisfaction was largely based around watching their character perform a specific animation. Users would set up extravagant rooms, like casinos, and invite players to gamble their furniture or credits away at the chance of winning big. But unfortunately for most of those who'd participate, the tables were more than just rigged in the favor of the house. The games would be intentionally rigged, someone would do a false trade with another player, and the furniture would be stolen and the potential gambler would be thrown out of the room. Another effective method was mass spamming a room's chat feed. Since the game solely relied on socialization between players, if somebody got in the way and flooded the chat with garbage or nasty messages, it'd prevent users from being able to play the game in the ways they intended. They'd either have to report the offending party before leaving the room or logging off, or they'd have to stay and just try to argue their point. If they got heated, there'd be a good chance that a moderator would eventually show up and ban both parties, one for being an instigating troll and the other because they said a bad word one too many times. In fact, the moderation on the site was pretty finicky to say the least. As the game would continue to expand to other markets, new moderators had to be hired to watch over the many patrons of whatever new electronic hotel was just established. The problem here was that this was still a relatively new thing for online gaming. You know, having a set of watchdogs who would meticulously monitor what was happening behind the scenes. This was no easy task. They were quite proactive, and reporting somebody would usually get a response from staff within a minute or two. I mean, think about it. If you reported someone in an online game today, you'd be lucky if they even glanced at the report 2 or 3 days after you sent it, but that implies that companies even still check reports. This meant that you can actually rely on moderators to do their jobs so long as they're willing to actually follow their own rules. This turned out to be a problem at times. Some staff would abuse the power that had been bestowed upon them. They were given a unique set of tools that, while useful for enforcing the laws of the hotel, were also just as dangerous as they were good. This toolset could be used to harass players with relative impunity. If you happen to piss off a moderator, they could ban you and there's a good chance that you couldn't do anything about it. Most bans are final and the appeals process is rarely ever fruitful. Even then, it's technically a private service and they reserve the right to refuse access to anybody they see fit. 9 times out of 10, if somebody is banned even if they're doing something that breaks the Habbo way, they'd get mad and begin kicking and screaming. This gave the mods an excuse to do whatever they want, because the worst that would happen was the usual whining. Mods were throwing people out for being annoying, for looking certain ways, for having names they didn't like, even for petty disagreements. This was a major issue in the community that was mostly swept under the rug by the game's staff, but the rumor of players getting targeted would continue to spread behind the scenes. Players had to be secretive, whispering and warning each other about the potential forthcoming ban hammer that could wallop them on their head. This had the potential of being catastrophic. The moderation's abusive nature came to the forefront when players started to report that they had been banned for having characters with dark skin complexions. You heard that right. Habbo, the virtual non-existent hotel, had deep-rooted prejudice coursing through its halls, affecting the staff's ability to adequately deal with the issues that were plaguing the service. How could young Habbos feel safe knowing that the color of their pixels would potentially get them thrown out of the illustrious hostel that they had likely invested real money into? For some of the more neurotic players, it became common practice to start recording your screen whenever you would be online, just in case if the great hand in the sky wanted to pluck you from the game. Others saw an opportunity to play some jokes on unsuspecting users by falsifying footage of them being banned, either through the use of video editing techniques or by kicking out pre-made accounts on what is known as a Habbo Retro. Retros are third-party services that utilize stolen assets from the official Habbo game, wherein players can run their own custom private servers that emulate the same functionality as the official game. They'd superimpose Photoshop messages that would say something along the lines of, "Sorry, you're banned for being black." This was shocking then, and it's still pretty damn jarring to see now. And of course, these videos would start to circulate in the community, making players feel quite uneasy. Fan forums were taking notice and posts were being made in regards to the rumors, and the hysteria was at an all-time high. It was only a matter of time before some particularly brave Habbos would rise up against the machine to fight for what's right. Eventually, some avid Habbo players that also had a knack for raunchy humor congregated on 4chan to organize a raid to push back against the racist mods and bigoted staff that had infested Sulake. On July 6, 2006, dedicated users on the B board began to host small raids in various public rooms in Habbo, referring to themselves as blockers and brothers, with the emphasis being on the B in those titles, alluding to the B board for obvious reasons. The crew decided that a simple and easy way to upset the site's moderation, alongside pissing off the game's users, was to disrupt access to the entrances of hangout locations like various virtual halls of the hotels, the lobby, and most importantly the Lido deck, the pool that so many Habbos love to swim around in. The Lido deck featured a variety of things that Habbos could partake in. They could sit at tables and chat with strangers, get a refreshing pixelated drink from the concession stand, screw around in the changing rooms, or more importantly, hit the diving board and take a little dip in the pool. Unfortunately for the patrons who wanted to cool off in the pool, the B-tards were intending to take advantage of a design flaw in the game where avatars couldn't pass through each other, effectively allowing people to block other players from accessing specific parts of rooms. The Lido deck was one of the most popular destinations for players, especially those who had just signed up and wanted to see what the game was all about. Blockades had become a widespread issue that both veteran and new players alike were going to have to put up with. Small-scale raids were continually happening from that point forward, but something much larger was brewing behind the scenes that both players and the hotel staff were not ready for. The hilarity of the blocking began to spread and users of the B-board were really starting to take notice. This was a prime time for them to raise hell and upset a bunch of random folks online, so why wouldn't they take a risk and make their mark on the internet? As they say, history is written by the victors. This was something far larger than them, and Sulake wouldn't know what hit them until it was far too late. It was decided that July 12, 2006 would be the day the pools would be blocked off for good. Rumors had been circulating that the water had been infected by an even more potent strain of AIDS, and simply entering the pool could get you riddled with autoimmune problems that would likely lead to your untimely death, and nobody deserves to die due to negligence of a yellow and orange hellscape hotel. Basic tutorials were created to instruct participants on how to dress and engage with the site, ranging from setting up their avatars to where to direct their emails to, what rooms to target, and how to get away with raiding before the racist mods would inevitably come in and try to throw them out. It's a little charming to look back and read stuff like this, because it was like 4chan users were actually preparing to jump feet first into a battlefield, fighting a war that motivated them solely through hilarity. The Habbo wait didn't mean shit when a bunch of people could easily break in and violate the rules, only to return within minutes. And I don't know, I think it's funny they were able to form a mascot so quickly. The more technologically inclined participants were creating tools to make the raiding process even easier, with macros for spamming phrases and even bypassing chat filters, which when functioning properly would replace swear words with Baba, a term created for the game. This also included automatic spam options for the Fresh Prince theme, alerts when moderators entered or left rooms, tools to automatically assign outfits, and much more. All it would take to get the point across was to block off areas of interest, make their cute little avatars do a dance, and to spam the chat with warnings about the pool being closed due to AIDS. The date was set for July 12th, and a time was scheduled. The raids would begin at 7 p.m. Pacific, and from that point forward, the raids would continue late into the night, in the middle of the week when Sulake's staff were least expecting to see a surge in player activity and thus would have less staff on hand at the time. July 12th came, and as you likely expect, the raid was unmatched. Dark-skinned avatars with pristine suits and massive afros flooded in every major room that they could squeeze into, blocking off entrances and preventing users from enjoying the goofy activities that the game offered. Players didn't know what to do at this point. They couldn't really fight back. It's not like the game offered them an ability to shove someone out of their way or punch them right in the balls. They'd either have to sit there and take it, or just head somewhere else to spend their time. Sulake tried to fight back as much as they could, and while they were able to kick people out in large quantities to clean up the player count and allow normal users to access the affected rooms, it would usually just be a few minutes, if that, before the B-tards returned in full force. It really did seem like Sulake was fighting an uphill battle. They had the tools to permanently remove people from the service, but it took far longer to get rid of unruly players than it did for 4chan users to create new accounts and start up their shit. Not to mention how many of these people had a fleet of backup accounts for when they were eventually banned. It was never an if, but rather a when. Even if Sulake were able to develop a means to combat the raiders, it would be too late at that point. All they could do for now was continuously ban accounts as more kept swarming in. They'd ban one, and 2 more would show up to take their place. The Lido deck was instantly packed with rambunctious patrons, and as such they had little choice but to start entering other public spaces and even user-created rooms. For this period, it was like a massive plague was spreading throughout the windy halls of the hotel, and all people could do was watch as the system began to crumble. The Habbo way, along with the other rules and systems Sulake had put in place to protect their software, were no match for the mighty autism of eccentric image board users with too much free time on their hands. I mean, think about this from the perspective of somebody who was actively playing the game. You've spent a lot of time on the game because you've made some buddies on the site and you've likely invested some of your real money on it, or your parents' cash anyway, so you've got a bit of an investment in the game regardless. You care to be able to have fun with something that you've put so much time into, and here comes along B with their idea of humor and they decide that you don't get to do the things that you want to do tonight. It would probably piss you off and make it incredibly hard for you to trust Sulake's ability to actively maintain the game that they clearly want you to spend your money on. Credits, Habbo Club, all of that shit meant nothing when an image board could work together to disrupt what you and your internet pals can do in Habbo. But it didn't just stop with blocking and saying nasty things in the chat feed. B-board users had a few more tricks up their sleeves. It was discovered that the large afro sprite would work great for creating messages by having individual avatars stand next to each other. But what could they spell out or create? I mean, there's a limited space in each room, you know, so there was only a select amount of tiles that would accept foot traffic. B, being what it is, chose to create massive swastikas by lining up their avatars. Hate symbols had to show up too. This was referred to as a swastiget. The reason behind this naming convention is most likely a reference to get, a term of acknowledging a unique post ID on an image board. So if you got the lucky post ID of 69, it'd be 69 get. It was a lot of work or luck to get special numbers, and it was also an effort to form hate symbols in a game due to so many people getting banned, or, you know, others getting in the way, hence successfully doing so being called a swastiget. But there was one symbol created by the B-tards that would really set them apart. Even while there was an ongoing battle between the racist moderators and the oppressed-suited minorities, you could always see their insignia in the background. A little gag that acted as their flag sitting atop their battle station, the Afro Duck. All it took was a player walking behind the duck statue on the Lido deck with their avatar facing west. This little trick made the statue look as though it was sporting an afro in solidarity with the raiders, showing that not only did the duck support the cause, but that B had totally taken over the pools. This was their land now, and there wasn't shit Sulake could do about it. When the dust settled, their reputation with their users had been tarnished due to their inability to adequately respond to the raids, and the internet was collectively pointing their fingers and laughing. Even if they tried to implement fixes that could make it harder for players to do these things, who's to say they wouldn't be back with a fury soon enough? Huh. Well, the funny thing about that is, it did keep happening. While B had effectively won here and more raids would continue to happen over the following days and months with much smaller turnout, this gave Sulake ample time to start ramping up their protective measures against raiders. In the time since the initial 2006 raid, Sulake has implemented some of the following changes. They updated their Habbo Way guidelines to better address raiding and the methods used in the blocking wars. Alongside this, moderators had a larger presence in public spaces, usually hiding behind door entrances which had sprite work covering the various Habbo avatars idly standing in their first tile. This also included banning thousands of flagged accounts and IP banning in some extreme cases. Blocking was removed, allowing avatars to face through one another with little issue. Their chat filters were improved to detect spam and inappropriate language. The Raider avatar, featuring dark skin, a suit, and afro, were banned from use. Some users reported getting outright kicked off the service for using that combination, while others claimed that they were simply unable to make their avatar use that appearance configuration. Either way, this iconic B-tard fit was illegalized for a short while. This change, of course, would later be undone. This all would ultimately mean nothing because raids would continue for the foreseeable future in a few different shapes and forms. Users of the B-board were thrilled with their successful takeover of the website, immediately planning their next raid, which would take place exactly 1 year later in 2007. Each raid was massive in their own right, but it was never as big or impactful as the one from 2006. Damn, has it really almost been 20 years? Shit. Video footage of many raids exist out there, and it goes to show just how much people believed in the idea. They didn't care that what they were doing was in poor taste, or that maybe they'd lose all their throwaway accounts on Habbo. They were having fun at the cost of other people's ability to enjoy the game as well, and I find that fucking hilarious. On the internet, sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Sulake sent out a mass message informing players of the newly founded Afro Suit Day, an attempt from them to try to disarm the raiders by making their apparel something that everybody could wear, as if that would stop the trolls from having their fun. The message reads as follows. Message from Habbo staff. For those who didn't know, today is International Afro Suit Day. If you're feeling the effects of a sugar high, put on an afro suit and party. Watch out though, I hear those afro wigs have lice. Ew! P.S. Don't send calls for help about the afros, just join them. Considering that they were banning people anyway, maybe it wasn't a good idea for people to partake in the holiday festivities. It never really mattered what Sulake did in retaliation, as the raiders would always return, even if you restricted their access to their iconic attire, which by the way the US version of Habbo tried to do for a short period. They don a new apparel and swarm the pools whenever they felt the need to spread the message of Crest Talk jizzing in the pool and giving unsuspecting hotel residents AIDS. From what I've been able to find, people do still attempt to pull off raids, but they're never really that large and usually get swept under the rug by the site staff. These days, they likely employ AI moderation to detect raids and throw out any offending parties. Some of the anniversary raids and miscellaneous scattered events range from the following: Guy Fawkes Day 2012, World AIDS Day 2012, July 12, 2012. Again, these all had their pros and cons, but nothing would ever compare to the legendary 2006 raid. The success of this entire debacle inspired people to push the pool's closed joke beyond its birthing ground, spreading to another virtual world called Second Life, and even bleeding into the real world. In 2008, a woman discovered a pool's closed sign affixed to the fence surrounding a pool near her home. Due to the time period, the internet was not as disgustingly intertwined with the real world as it is now. Nobody could have predicted that leaving up a silly sign would cause this much of a stir.
Mary Altorfer wants to believe it's a bad coincidence.
The kids are scared. I think I was really frazzled.
That this sign saying pool's closed just happened to go up a day after she took her 6 and 9-year-old biracial grandchildren to the community pool.
And I tell myself it's just a bunch of racist, homophobic geeks ridiculing me.
Since she first spoke about the note, messages have flooded her phone.
Hello, Mary. I would just like to say that you were wrong about the thing that says pool is closed.
Some try to explain it away as part of an internet phenomenon where users of an online chat room block entrances to pools in other areas around July 12th.
And I assure you, it has nothing to do with a personal attack against you or your children.
And those who don't know of it are left out of the joke or become a target.
It's a picture of me with an afro.
During our interview, Altorfer learned of a second flyer at the pool.
An 11-year-old child saw an older man with a beard put another sign up at the pool.
This time, New Braunfels police did collect it for prints.
Hopefully, when they get tired of making fun of a grandma online and on my home phone, they will find something better to do, something good and worthwhile with their time.
The grandmother did not understand the reference and got ass hurt, claiming that it was a racist attack against her grandchildren and refusing to accept that it was a lowbrow gag. This is more than likely one of the first times that an internet meme had managed to creep out of the depths of the web and manifest physically somewhere in the real world. Well, excluding the whole Project Chanology thing, but that's a story for another day. Normal people didn't know how to take this, nor did they even partially grasp the humor behind it. But those that were well acquainted with the workings of the web knew that this was harmless. However, nobody knew that this would just be a sign of things to come. Also in 2008 was a Fox 11 News report about Anonymous, a hacker collective that has its roots in 4chan. The highly dramatized report tried to paint the group as a shadow organization that wanted to dismantle society and cause terror through a computer, I guess. The broadcast made bold claims, trying to give the impression that they were domestic terrorists who blow up cars and make people buy dogs. But something that stands out in this is the mention of Habbo raids. This was yet another sign that the pool's closed fad had yet to die off, and the strength of the B-tards had yet to be matched.
They get less. They enjoy doing this. they get what they call lulls.
Lulls is a corruption of LOL, which stands for laugh out loud. Anonymous gets big lulls from pulling random pranks. For example, messing with online children's games like Habbo Hotel. The pranks are often anti-Semitic or racist and always posted on the internet.
There were even congregations of pool blockers in real life, with people showing up outside Sulake's headquarters in Finland, sporting glorious afro wigs and finely pressed suits, eventually forming a symbol that we've seen a few times during this video. The same kind of get they got at the sun-soaked pools back at the hotel, with an anime girl standing right in the center. People dressed as raiders would be part of internet culture's leakage into the real world. You'd see them at conventions and protests over the years, truly signaling that the battle at the Lido had changed those who had borne witness to it. Normal players utilized some of the same raiding tactics from 2006 during in-game protests. Habbo received several changes over the years that impacted the way that players would enjoy their game, such as taxing their player-to-player furniture sales, muting the entire game's chat system after negative journalist reviews regarding the game's rampant use by predators, and the removal of game content. Players would stand lined up, forming symbols or walls, even if they couldn't block people. They'd stand there, spamming the chat if they weren't muted, using their time to spread their side of an argument. While the message may have been different from what the B-tards were saying, the methods more or less stayed the same as the tried-and-true tactic for getting the staff's attention. Sulake, surprisingly, keeps referencing this prolific war every few years with occasional content updates to Habbo. This includes a sprite of an evil raider, a small painting featuring 2 blockers, individual portraits of a raider and a duck, another painting that featured the Lido deck being used by an afro duck, and a single sprite of a suited afro duck. Man, that's a lot of ducks. This, to me, is a sign that the impact of the raid was so powerful that not only did the internet step back and take notice, but so did the company behind the game that they were raiding. Sulake may not have liked what happened. They obviously admonished the racist connotations behind the jokes and various naughty things they said, but they cherished the attention that the raids brought to their game, and the significance it held in the product's reputation. Regardless of whatever else would be added to the game, good or bad, logical or totally fucking stupid, the Afro Duck remains as the sign of the B-tards that fought so valiantly to keep the hotel residents safe from AIDS. Raids like this don't really happen much in games these days. They can still occur, but it's rarely anything as powerful. There's too many safety nets and preemptive measures taken by companies to prevent people from rising up in a game, whether it be for the lulz or to let the game's developers know that you're not happy about something. The internet has truly changed, and now all we have is the quaint little memories of a time past. And more importantly, this one little image of a duck with an afro. Never forget. Boy, oh boy, was that a fun ride. But unfortunately, that's going to be the end for today's video. If you like what I do, leave a comment, rate, and subscribe. If you want to support me in a more personal way, you can check out the Patreon link and the Teespring link in the description. I've also got a Newgrounds account if art stuff is your thing. I've got more content coming down the pipeline. But until then, I'll see you degenerates next time.